Okay guys, it is finally time. I'm gonna get to processing some of this gigantic yam that we pulled out earlier in the season, especially since it's trying to come back to life. So we're gonna cut off the bits that are waking up and save those and replant them. See right there, it's actually quite beautiful. This is Dioscorea alata white-winged yam. And we've got little really funky looking roots coming out of there and there and there. So these are going to get cut off. We'll save those. We're going to get to processing the rest. I let it sit long enough for it to want to wake up and start doing its thing. Kind of pleased with myself. I set up this little area so I can sit and chop and rinse. This is going to be for the boiling water. Zip ties are a girl's best friend. Okay. This is being supported on a bar underneath here, but it wasn't long enough, so it was kind of topsy-turvy, and that fixed that. And then this, I can retract this hose and leave it there dripping or running for when I want to rinse off the yams. They're going to go from there after being peeled and rinsed in here. Fill that up with water, rinse it out really good, get rid of a lot of the excess sap and dirt and everything. That way I can just lift this up and shake it out and refill it with clean water and so on, and then it'll be going up on a cooker to boil down, to be essentially mashed very gently and then dehydrated to be floured or powdered to turn Yep, I knew how to say that right. Into instant mashed potatoes. Right, let's get to work. Here is a nice little display of this white, fleshy, starchy tuber that I'm so excited to be processing. We are switching to gloves because as a defensive mechanism to ward off bacterial or fungal infection, if the tuber gets damaged, it produces a white, milky, latex-looking sap or mucilage, and it contains calcium oxalate crystals as well as saponins and alkaloids. Now, the calcium oxalate crystals gets released in the mucilage, and they're microscopic but very sharp. So it'll give tiny little scratches to your skin and irritate it, and then the saponins and alkaloids irritate your nerve endings and gives you what's actually called the yam itch. Now you can process these under running water, and I have done that and have had no issues with that yam itch at all. I have tried to do it without anything, and I do feel like I sort of built up a tolerance to it, just pain and irritant level wise, but I'm going to wear gloves today. I don't want the water running that long. I have all of this to process. I would recommend wearing gloves to avoid that irritation or processing it under running water. And as we're peeling and chopping this, we're going to rinse it and then let it rest in a bucket of water to further draw out some of that sap. And don't worry, all of those components break down when you process it, when you cook it. It's actually called thermal degradation. So, and the calcium oxalate crystals are water soluble, so it'll just come out, they'll break down, and you won't get any of it in the finished product. I wanted to show an example of that sticky, there we go, you see it separating from the knife? Let's get a little closer. Okay, so that can irritate your skin, but it will go away through cooking it. And then running it underwater definitely helps to make this more tolerable, but it's very slippery when you're processing it, so just be careful. Alright, so we're going to take this, cut it into the size chunks that I want. Just say slices, so we're not in the chunk stage yet. It is slippery, so be careful. All this extra dirt, so we're going to give it a little bit of a rinse and not get myself with it, just so I don't get all of that in the meat. Okay, and then from here, another spray. That one's particularly dirty. Alright, and then that, I'm going to cut the skin off. You want these little eyes and pieces gone. Okay. You can get a peeler out if you want, but it gets to be actually kind of a pain sometimes. Good. You have to be efficient about this too. I mean, I want as little waste as possible, but in the end, when you look at your scrap pile, there's really not that much waste. Just gonna cut that right off, and then we're gonna cut that guy off. And it is okay to go a little deeper in this skin because a lot of these irritants that are in the meat, they like to stay up near the surface, so we're going to save these wonky pieces for after. Give it a little bit of a spray now. I don't want any of that. Not a chopping contest. I just want them all generally uniform so they cook at the same time. The thickness is important. There we are. Raw Dioscorea alata, white winged yam. This is going to sit in water until I'm ready to get it on to boil. Just a quick word, when you encounter pieces like this, I typically don't waste my time trying to get the meat out of these. I'll cut as close as I can to these crevices, but you see they go all the way down. So by the time you're done trying to peel that skin away, you're left with a very teeny tiny piece of meat. What you can do, here's another example. What you can do though is if you plan ahead and try not to leave too much open skin, you can take this piece and let it dry, or dunk it in some ash and let it dry, and this will become a new plant. So these propagate in a lot of different ways. This is definitely one of them. So this is a good piece right here, even though it's showing a lot of skin. You can dry that off, turn it into another plant. And then end cuttings like this, where again you can see it just wouldn't be efficient or practical to try to get the meat out of that skin, because you do want to cut a little bit deeper into this skin. But that will become a new plant. So there's all of that, and not that much scraps, and a ton left to do. Okay, that's the last of it for today. This is going to get nice and rinsed off. All of the debris has settled to the bottom. It's pretty heavy. It's a lot. Doesn't even look like I took a dent out of that thing. Going in for its final rinse. All nice and clean now. A lot of the fat has been removed. Let me give this a little bit of a shake. Alright, and then it can sit in that water until we're ready to boil it. Okay. Water is boiling. All right. Get that to come back up to boil. Cooked all the way through to break down the irritating components, and you'll start to see some gray foam that comes to the top. That's normal. We'll check that out in a minute. Okay. Looks like we got a good boil going, so now we'll start the official timer for about 30 minutes, and then I'll come out and check one, make sure that it's cooked all the way through. But I love that they're moving all about, so they'll cook nice and even. Okay, it's time to see if they're cooked all the way through. Actually kind of look like it. Put that right there. Okay. Well, they're pretty soft. Smells like mashed potatoes out here. Look at that. It's like a whole little dish of mashed potatoes right there. I think what I'm going to do is shut off the flame, let this cool down maybe just for 10 minutes before I drain it, and then I'll let it cool off completely, and then we'll start smushing it to get it in the dehydrator. Okay, the white winged yam cubes are cooked and cold and easy to handle, so now we're going to smush them. You can use a fork, you can use a potato smasher, you can use a food processor, but the problem with food processors or any high-speed processors is it tends to make it more starchy or more gluey. And we don't really want to over-process these because they already have a slightly higher starch content. So we're going to be real gentle with this part. I just want to break it up so it can sit on the dehydrator trays or the leather trays evenly without having highs and lows or having these thick chunks that'll take longer to dehydrate than the well mashed ones. I'm going to take the smasher and get more than one at once, and just the fork. Just enough that it'll be a little bit easier to lay on the trays, and it'll all dry evenly. Here's actually a different leather tray. I'm just going to lay it nice and loose on there. I have a few of these, so it makes it easier to be able to lay them a little looser like that, so more air can get through there and dry it out quicker. And then you continue on until it's all done, and we set it on the dehydrator. And here they all are, 6 trays. This is going to go on the dehydrator at 135 or 140 degrees Fahrenheit, between 8 and 12 hours or longer, depending. And we're going to make sure that these are dehydrated all the way until they're brittle and they break easy, so when we put it in the blender it'll turn into a nice powder or flour. And then we get to test it out and taste test it and see how our instant mashed potatoes, instant yams turned out. Okay, It's the next day. They've been on the dehydrator at 135 degrees for about 16 hours. I've already checked them for the appropriate doneness. As you can hear, they sound very, very hard, very dry. And then if we come here, at my nails, that's stains from mulberries. They crack and crumble there at all. That's completely done. Same for all of the trays. Did a quick check on them all, which is important. They're not always all the same. That's done. So we're gonna let them all cool off, and then we're gonna throw them in my Ninja food processor and get it down to a flour, as close to a flour as we can get it. Alright, we're just gonna load this into the food processor. And then this one has a specific setting for flour. It's gonna be loud. Still got a few little chunks in there. Okay, I figured I'd give it a shot and run it through for the full time on the flour setting. And that made a huge difference. There's none of the hard chunks that were there before. Oh yeah, that's great. This definitely is more of a flour consistency. So I'm going to take some of this and rehydrate it with some milk and some butter. It's 1/4 cup. I'm not add too much, although it's thickening right up already. Definitely going to add the rest of this. Okay, I skimped a little on the liquid. That's really tasty. Grinding it a little bit longer definitely made a big difference. No sense of graininess at all. It's very smooth. Excuse me while I pig out. That's it. Totally worth it. Okay, there we have it. How cool is that? That is dehydrated and floured white winged yam, Dioscorea alata, instant mashed potatoes.